Alrighty, and just like that, Steve, we're on.
Sweet. How you going, Johnny?
I'm good. So here we're at Ultimate Fighting Arts in Penrith. I'm sitting with Steve Perceval, coach here, head coach here. Also, you might have seen him before if you are a fan of the UFC. He's refed how many? Well, it's funny. I actually brought this up to Steve before. Like, I always like to do a little bit of a search, and Sherdog came up. And I'm like, oh, Steve's on Sherdog because he had some fights or something. And I pulled it up, and it goes 253 fights, and I'm going, what the fuck? And then I've scrolled down, and I've realised that it was the fights that he's refereed. So it's pretty cool, but it doesn't have everything.
No, it doesn't have everything. Definitely not. I've done a lot of little shows, and there's a great meme going around with just a local event that says, if you haven't worked this, and then it's got another picture underneath with the UFC, it says you shouldn't work this, which is true. You've got to cut your teeth somewhere, and it should be on local events doing little shows where no one knows you.
Yeah. Well, I want to get to the refereeing part, but I'll save that for later because I want to try and draw out as many funny stories and good stories that you've got from that side of things. But to sort of pull it all back, let's go right back to the start. So where did you grow up, Steve?
I grew up around the suburbs of Sydney. So when I say the suburbs, we moved around quite a bit as I was a kid. And that's just because we didn't have a home. We had to move from place to place as my mum found accommodation.
Really?
Yeah.
So when you say, you had to move around, it's like your mum was just like literally just trying to find places for you guys to stay so you're not homeless, really?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we grew up quite poor.
Yep.
And so I've got three older brothers and a sister they're all older than me. I'm the baby.
You're the baby.
I'm the baby. Yeah.
5 of you guys.
Yeah, and my dad abandoned us, so to speak, when I was born. Pretty much.
Really?
Must have been me.
Did you ever, out of curiosity, have you ever reconnected with him or anything?
Oh yeah. I grew up seeing him at different times. My grandmother would take me to his house, and I would see him from time to time.
Yeah.
And I knew him. And I actually worked a couple of weeks for him as a sign writer, but that didn't work out very well.
Yeah. Is there any animosity there, or was there any animosity there when you first sort of reconnected with him, and then you're also trying to understand why aren't you part of my life kind of thing?
None at all, because I grew up without him.
Yeah.
So it was no problem for me.
Yeah.
For my brothers and sister, but it messed them up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they had a hard time with it, especially my sister. I think she was 14 when he left, and I was speaking with her the other night, and she said she felt the hurt. She was a real daddy's girl, and she really felt the hurt from that. Mm. And I'm the baby, as I said, but there's between me and my next youngest brother, there's 8 years.
Wow.
So it's quite a significant difference.
Big
in
gaps.
age. Yeah,
wow.
Huge gap.
So between the age gap between me and my brother is 7 years, so I can sort of appreciate how big of a gap that is.
Yep, sure.
And so I guess for you, growing up as the baby, right? Were you like the annoying little brother, always wanting to do the things that the older siblings wanted to do?
Absolutely. However, my next oldest brother, he was the annoying big brother. He was the one who always teased me, poked fun at me, was always on my case about something. He was the real teaser. So jokes and that I can take. Yep. There's no dramas. No dramas with me. It's like water off a duck's back.
Helped you to develop some thick skin.
Absolutely, yeah.
So then, out of curiosity, what was your mum doing for work to try and make ends meet?
She was a waitress at times, and most of the time she'd work a couple of jobs. She worked for record companies. She did whatever she could to make money. And as I said, we were very poor. And I hear a lot of stories, even worse stories than when I grew up, about what my sister and my brothers endured through that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but once again, I didn't know I was poor.
Yeah.
That was just normal life for me.
Yeah.
I just thought, this is how everyone lives.
Isn't it funny? Like, it's only when you have this, what's the old saying of comparison is the thief of all joy, right?
Yep.
Until you know that somebody's got something better. Yep. Or like this idea that something is better, that you suddenly feel like more disaffected in your own situation.
Yep.
Right. And like, I always think about this story. So Percy, he's been on the podcast and he's telling me the story. He grew up in Kenya and he was living in this house where basically it was like sort of like, you know, like you think about like a kind of like an apartment, right? But like the back area is like a shed sort of a thing.
Yep.
And they're sleeping in this shed area, but it's not fully enclosed. So pigeons used to sleep in there, and it was just covered in bird shit.
Yep.
And like for him, he was like, when he tells this story, like he used to say like at school and things like that, people would be like, oh, that sounds really, really sad. But for him, it was like, this is like the best times of his life, because he's living in a community where, like, you know, he gets up in the morning. He's not thinking about the bird shit or anything. He's thinking about going and playing with his mates. And it's only like after you get to experience, you know, a slightly different form of life and what life could potentially be, that you could actually think, you know, oh, that does sound quite sad. Right? Yeah,
I don't feel sad when I hear about it, except that my mum, you know, she came into this world without anything and she left without anything. The most important thing for her was her love for her children. It was incredible. She didn't want worldly possessions at all. All she cared about was her children. Yeah. And so, you know, I tried to give her as much as I could, and she never wanted anything. She just never wanted anything except the love of. She just loved her children so much, and that's it. And so, to say we were poor, it's not a sob story in a way. I think it helps make you who you are. You know, makes you resilient, makes you stronger. I went without, and if I don't have any money now, I go without. Yeah, it's not a problem. Yeah. So I don't see it as a real huge sob story. I do, of course, wish my mum had more. Wish she had a better life. She had a very hard life, and so I wish she had a better life. But for me, she gave us everything she possibly could. Yeah, everything. Yeah, that's kind of like the Albert Einstein quote on giant shoulders. I always talk about that because I think it's like, you know, the platform that your parents give you. Like in terms of like, you know, because she works so hard to provide you guys with a loving household and all that sort of stuff. It allows you to be the person that you are. Yes. Right. And so without that, like, and there are people that don't have those figures in their life if they're orphans and that kind of thing. So, you know, the simple fact, if you've got a loving or a person that loves you, that looks after you, like that is one of the biggest legs up in life that you could ever get. Absolutely. And excuse me, for myself, I had children at a young age, and so now I've got grandchildren, and we live for those grandchildren. You know, I'm at their sporting carnivals for school. I'm at their weekend sports. I just love being around my own grandchildren, and of course my own daughters. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So then, what about when it came to schooling then? So if you guys were moving around, did you go through a whole bunch of different schools? Hell yeah. I went to Burke Street Primary School in Surrey Hills, and then I was at Camperdown Public School. That's the one on Parramatta Road. Then I was at Leichhardt Primary School. Then I went over. I was at Ibrox Park, which was my first high school at Leichhardt, and then I finished up in my high school years in Dover Heights Boys High School in Bondi. I lived in Bondi then. Wow. Yeah, so moved a few places. Yeah, and that's pretty well nothing compared to my brothers and sisters. Once again, we lived in not ideal situations, cockroach infested homes and things like that. But that's what you did then. Yeah. So then, when it came to like making friends and stuff, like was that always a bit of a challenge, or like because you moved school so many times, right? You're always this new kid kind of a thing. I had good friends. I can't say. When I first went to Dover Heights in high school, it's different. When you're in primary school, you just play with any kid, doesn't matter. Yeah. But when I went to Dover Heights, I thought, wow, there's a whole bunch of different people here that I have no idea. So I just somehow I made one friend, and then it just progressed on from there. And I was kind of lucky because the friends I made were like, they were the tough kids of the school, but they didn't go around getting in fights. So it was sort of in a bit of a protected community, so to speak. So we managed to avoid the bullies. Yeah. So I had some good friends like that. And as we were talking before, and you was telling me about one of your friends, and you just pick up where you left off when you see those friends again. It's like you've never been away from them. Yeah. You're still back at school. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Like it. Like it's gonna sound horrible, right? But like, it's like the easiest way I can to say it is like that little boy or that kid that you are when you're like 15, 16,
you're still that kid. You're just in a 40-year-old man's body.
Well, for me, it's a 60-year-old man's body.
Right? Well, for me, it's 40. So yeah, you got 20 years on me, right? So but you still got like that. You know, you're playful, right? Like you still have that sort of playful attitude, and you know, like whether it's like playing sports or games, like you still want to do that sort of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know, it's funny. Like I guess from having kids or grandkids, you know, you still want to do those things and be active with them as well. It's kind of like re-releasing your inner child again.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's not that long ago that I was running around. I live near a golf course. Like I back onto a golf course. So I used to take my grandson out there every day, and we used to run around, kick the footy, and then my other grandchildren come along, and we always go out there, play cricket, soccer, run around, and just be kids.
Yeah.
I'm still that kid.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you noticed me the other day in a seminar. I was having a great time. It was just so much fun. So yeah, it was great. I still love having a laugh with people, having a joke with people, stirring people up. I'm an instigator.
Yep.
You know, so, but yeah, I'm still that kid.
Yeah.
I'm still that kid. I just sometimes when I look in the well, not when I look in the mirror, when I see a picture like this podcast, when I see myself on this, I'm going to go, "Who is that old man?"
Gonna put your glasses on. Have a closer look.
No, it's nothing worries me like that. You know, like I was just in Shanghai just recently for the UFC Road to UFC, and one of the UK judges, I was standing in his way while he was trying to get a photo, and he said, "Come on, Granddad, get out of the way." And I just laugh at that. That's cool. That's cool for me. I don't mind that at all. Yeah. This should spin you out. How old are you?
I'm 40.
Okay, I've got daughters older than you.
Yeah, there you go. Man, you did start young then.
I did, yeah, I did.
We'll get to that. God. So, okay, and then when it came to like schooling and academics and stuff, like what kind of kid were you? Like, what did your teachers say about you?
I was a dumbass. I was a dopey kid at school. I have no idea how I got through school. In fact, I didn't get through school, but anyway. I was not the brightest spark, that's for sure. Yeah. I was a C grade kid.
Yeah.
When we had grades.
Yeah.
Back in those days when we had grades, I was a C grade kid. On my good subjects, I was B grade. On my bad subjects, D grade.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, what year did you end up leaving school then?
Fourth form, which is year 10.
Yep.
I left before my school certificate. We used to call it a school certificate then. Yeah, I left before that.
Yeah, okay.
I started jigging school.
Okay, so you're already like on the way out, kind of truanting and doing that kind of thing?
Yeah.
What were you doing when you were truanting?
Well, I lived in Bondi Beach.
Yeah, so you were.
I was like 100 metres, not 300 metres from the beach I lived. So I would just disappear, go fishing off the rocks, hang around with some other kids, body surf, swim. I swam almost every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Wow. Okay.
I have no regrets.
Yep. And so then, was there a moment then, you know, that you had to sort of realize, oh shit, I need to actually do something now that I'm no longer at school. I can't just, you know, be fishing and swimming every day.
Yeah. I think I had a few people that pushed me around a little bit, pushed me into the right positions. I remember my next door neighbour coming to me and saying he had a job if I wanted to do this job. And so I said, oh, okay. And so I went along and I worked at the Smith family, unloading furniture trucks for a year and a half or so.
Okay.
So, and that was a life change, I'll tell you. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Prior to that, I did try and work as a signwriter with my dad, and that didn't go down too well. I was a lazy kid. I was lazy and not motivated to do anything. I never had a strong role model like my dad. I never had a strong role model in my life. My brothers were my role models, and they were up to no good a lot of times. We had some problems with our family like that, but and they didn't do anything really bad, but you know, just alcoholism and things like that. So you know, we had that in our lives.
Yeah. So then, you know, out of curiosity, when you're talking about signwriting, he was like one of the painting signwriting.
Yep.
Yeah, and like what was he working on? Big windows or like cars?
Oh, he worked on everything. He'd worked on cars. In fact, he was a very good signwriter, mostly self-taught, and he was really good. He did a sign which I wish I I mean, cameras weren't around, phones weren't around like they are today. He did a sign once, and it was on Parramatta Road, up on the top of a building, and it was all circles. The whole sign was circles, and it said Cinema Italiano, and he did it all by hand, and it was just huge.
Wow.
And he was great. He was great like that. And so what I did learn from him was the concepts of looking at a sign and being able to see if it was correct or not by the gapping in the letters and things like that. So I did learn a lot from him. He was also very good. You see all the stickers on the side of trucks and things like that. He used to do that with what they call a dagger brush. He'd just slide along, and it was just always straight, and then he'd just curl it at the end. He was good. He was very good.
Very steady hand.
Very steady hand. Mum used to say he used to come home, and he would just suddenly move the lounge out of the way and paint this big mural on the wall. And she said so quite often they would just go through things like that. You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so he's just like always an artist kind of a guy.
Oh, always an artist, yeah. He was very good at doing country home settings, like little homesteads and things like that. I got him to do me a sign for when I first opened up in Penrith, and it was the worst sign I've ever seen him do. It was horrible. It was horrible. And I said to him, that is shit. And he goes, what are you talking about? And we had a bit of an argument over it. I put the sign up. That sign pulled me so many people for my gym. It was incredible, but it was so ugly.
You didn't like it?
No, I hated it.
It was just artistic differences.
Oh, it was horrible. It was not.
But it worked, right?
It worked, yeah.
It was
absolutely,
function over form.
Yep, 100%. And I'll give him that. I'll give him that. It was function over form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always amazing. Like when I was in the car yards, you know, certain dealerships would use the guys that would handwrite the signs on the windscreens. I don't think it's as much of a thing nowadays, but you know, in the past, you know, used cars, as you drive around like Parramatta Road, you'd see all the, you know, it'll be like saying, you know, if it's an automatic or a manual and the price and all this sort of stuff. And then later on it became, you know, I feel like it's almost like not a lost art, but it's a dying art in the sense there's not as many people that would probably do that stuff nowadays. And so what used to happen is then the guys would move to stickers. So we go decals instead, so using vinyls. And then it was a lot easier to get a salesperson to do a vinyl than it was just if you were to give them a paint pen and the thing would look like shit. So
100%. I did a few signs on cars, and I remember my dad, we were at Five Dock. It was called Jubilee Motors at that time, Ford. And we used to throw like a thick blanket on the car, and we'd just literally get on the bonnet of a car. And you couldn't do that now.
Yeah.
And we'd just do a white background and then paint the colours, and he would do the faded colour, and it was always good.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's a real art. So I guess you know, you're saying that you're going to get into the story. So I guess what happened in the fallout, apart from you being lazy, and then what happened after that?
Wow, yeah, it's huge. I worked at the Smith family, and I met this young guy, and he was a young Maori kid, real abrupt talking, real tough looking little thing. I was scared of him when I first saw him. Had a big feather growing out, well, not growing, but he has to have a feather earring and had this long black hair, and he was very abrupt and very like angry, like an angry person, but he wasn't, you know. I can put down my most of my success to that kid.
Really?
Meeting that one kid. And it's quite incredible, really, because he changed my whole life. And just recently I reconnected with him, and he didn't have a clue. He had no idea of the impact that he had on my life.
Wow.
And so he just changed my whole life. And it wasn't anything he told me to do. It wasn't anything he said, gave me any inspirational words. It was just being a friend with him. And he changed me.
Well, he just connected with you really well.
We connected really well. He was like one of my schoolmates.
Yeah.
I was pretty young at that age too. First up, I worked alongside of him. And so we would compete basically in unloading furniture trucks, and which made the guys who had the furniture trucks really happy because they got out of work really early. So we started really seeing who could take the biggest thing on their trolley, who could go the fastest, who could unload the truck, fastest. It was really interesting. So he gave me a really good work ethic. And then one day he come into the Smith family. He said to me, "Yeah, you like martial arts, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah. I'd never done it at that stage." And he said, "I've seen a really cool one." He said, "And they wear black uniforms." That was the big deal for him. It wasn't what they could do, it was that they wore black uniforms. And he said, "It's in Oxford Street and at Darlinghurst there. You should go and have a look." So I did, and it was Hapkido.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, we can see it there.
It was Hapkido. The guy that I saw there, the instructor, was Matthew Sung Soo Kim.
Yep.
And was probably, I'd only ever seen movies, and of course Bruce Lee was a big inspiration.
Yep.
And I met this Matthew Kim, who just came to the door and just threw punches at my face that were just missing my nose by millimetres, and just was the most dynamic bloke I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And so I joined up in Hapkido.
So Korean guy, obviously.
Korean, yeah.
And did he speak good English at the time? Or?
Pretty good English. Not bad. It was his actions that just sold me. And he was a successful businessman with leather goods, but at that stage he was just breaking into Hapkido in Sydney, him and his brothers.
Yep. And
so it was really, really a great time to start martial arts. And Hapkido was just the most amazing martial art at that stage.
Yeah. And so, like, I guess, what can you sort of talk about? Like, what was the training like? Like, what would the class sort of look like? What was the structure? And
okay, so my number was number 56. So I was the 56th person to walk into that gym and join up, and that organisation still runs today. Although Matthew's he's not teaching classes or anything. He just goes as the figurehead. The training was hard. Yeah, like everything was hard. It was on a wooden floor. We had a canvas horsehair mat, so it was like falling on these tiles, basically. We learned techniques. It was the first time I learned a bit of kendo and a bit of what we call dambong, which is a very short stick in Hapkido, and we block a kendo stick with it. We learned a bit of that. We sparred, and it was hard sparring. When we did our break falls, he would then throw us, and I would watch the line diminish as the guys would hit the mat and then break fall. It was too late, and so they would diminish and end up sitting down sick and broken, and there'd be like three of us still going, and it was like who could last the longest, and Matthew would be throwing us hard. The training was just hard, and I think that's where I developed my teaching method in here. It's like pretty hard. Yep. Pretty hard style.
Resilience based.
Definitely resilience based, yeah. So then, I met my wife, and she wasn't my wife then, of course. No, I met my wife and went away from Hapkido, started a family, always pined to do martial arts again. But, once I had that Hapkido blood in me, I couldn't see anything else I liked. And we bought a house at Minto, and I found a small church hall where the guy was teaching Hapkido.
There you go.
Under Matthew Kim.
Okay.
So it was really interesting, and that's where I re-picked up.
Yeah.
And started my Hapkido.
Yeah, wow.
So
you skipped a whole bunch of different things over the years to get there. we got to go back. We got to circle back.
Sure.
so
you really want all the nitty gritty, don't
you? Of course. That's the whole point of this, right?
Good.
So,
nice.
So the Smith, like after working at the Smith family, what did you go into after that?
They moved away, and they moved to Villawood, and so I left that job, and I looked around for other work, and found a job at Woolworths in Sydney.
Yep.
And was a storeman there, and worked 2 floors underground, and I really enjoyed that. I met a lot of good people there, and but by that time I was a good worker.
Yep.
So I was really...
You already got the work ethic from the previous stuff?
From
Smith family?
Eddie. His name was Eddie. Eddie Roderick. He was my work ethic guy. And yeah, so after he left the Smith family, I carried on there, and we got up to some shenanigans there too. Yeah, I'll go back a story. I'll go back. Yeah, this kid Eddie, he was about 2 years older than me. Always had a comb in his pocket. Always had a comb in his pocket because he had this long, shiny black hair, and he was always combing his hair. And at one stage, I became the spray painter for the Smith family, where I would spray paint their wardrobes. And I brought in a new airless spray gun. And
airless spray gun? How
airless. It still had air in it, but it compresses it. It was in a big barrel. They've got them now. Everyone's got them now. And so this spray gun, to clean the nozzle, I could turn the nozzle around and I could blast paint from here to 30 feet away. It would just blast this paint. And I'd turn the nozzle around to clean it, so I'd send this stream of paint like a water pistol. And so one day I said to Eddie, come here, mate, come here. Come in here for a sec. I said, go stand over there. I got my paint gun. Yeah. And I said, okay, smarty, try and beat me up now. And he looked at me and he said, don't you do it. And I thought, I'll be smart. I'll spray the paint above his head. And I've gone like that and sprayed the spray. It's sent out this stream of paint, which is then dissipated in the air and fallen down all in his hair.
Oh, no.
I've looked at him. He's looked at me. I've dropped the gun and run. Just ran out of the spray booth and just ran to the toilets. Eddie's now chasing me because he wants to beat the snot out of me. So as I've gone up the stairs to the canteen, I've pushed the toilet door and kept running. And Eddie's gone into the toilets. I've gone out and back to the dock where I was waiting for Eddie to come back. He's come back over and he said, holy shit. He said, I've gone into those toilets and there was one cubicle closed. He said, I banged on the door and someone said, what do you want? And he said, I can see you. And he's looking through the crack of the door. I can see those beady little eyes. And he's banging on the door and the guy's gone, go away. And he's realised it wasn't me.
This guy having a shit. He's really shitting himself now.
So Eddie's come back, and now we're laughing, and that's the sort of friendship we had, where I would annoy the shit out of him. He would literally beat the snot out of me, and I mean, like, it didn't matter to this guy. He would grab me by the balls, pick me up, and just throw me somewhere, and then kick me or punch me a couple of times. And then I would proceed to do it again and again and again and again. So we became really good mates. He really trained me how to work. Yeah. And so from that carried me on to Woolworths, which was no biggie. I was a storeman. And then I got married while I was working at Woolworths. And then from there, I went to another company called Mavic, which was an import company, and they used to import a lot of cheap stuff. They imported a lot from Taiwan and stuff like that. But I went in there with that work ethic and worked like I did at the Smith family and at Woolworths, and they fell in love with me. So they kept me there, and I was there for quite a few years working for them. Yeah, so that was really good. I worked for the importer. He was an importer. There's more stories around that too. He was an importer, and he then opened up shops, and I worked as manager in his shops, and I worked as a sales rep from that same one company. But this man that owned Mavic was... Am I talking too much?
No. Okay. This is what I like to hear. I like the stories.
The man this man, his name was Vic Bogan, and... He was a boss's boss, and when I worked for a boss, I worked for the boss. He would come out and go, "Why is that on the floor?" I'd go, "I'm moving it," and we always got on well. And but I could see, like, he was highly successful. Like, he was probably the biggest importer into Australia at that time, I would say, into New South Wales anyway. And he had a beautiful mansion at Bellevue Hill, but I could see, as successful as he was, something was suffering, and it was what I felt was suffering anyway. He might not see it that way. Let's hope he doesn't hear this. But I found his family was suffering. You know, they were spoiled. There was just issues with that. And I thought, I want to be successful, but I don't want to be that successful.
Yeah.
Where I just forget about everything. I'd forget about my family. So he was like a workaholic. If he wasn't traveling overseas working, he's working late nights at his business, and he was just always working.
Yeah. It's very hard to find that balance. You know, we see that. I used to always call them industry statistics in the automotive industry. You know, you have part of the game is because it's retail, right? You're open 7 days a week in majority of the Sydney Metro dealerships.
Yep.
So, you know, you feel like, and especially in some organizations, there's a culture of like, you know, working really, really hard or be seen to be working really, really hard, right? And over time, you know, like you got to start to ask yourself, especially when you have family and kids and things like that. It's like, okay, what am I working for?
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of guys make the mistake if they go, I'm working to provide for my family.
Yep.
But there's actually like a point of diminishing returns on that.
Sure.
Where all your family wants is actually just want time with dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And then so it's like you go and like I've seen it happen so many times where guys would be working so hard to provide for their families. And it's like, but when is enough? And it's never enough. And so then it gets to this point where they end up getting divorced because their wives are like, well, you're never home.
Yep.
All you're doing is you're working.
Yep. Right?
And so, you know, it's a very difficult one to try and address. And I feel like it's one of those things where like there's a cultural shift that will happen in majority of industries as time goes on. Like there's only so long that, and I guess that's why, you know, most people find the greatest rate of growth in their 20s is because like they're working so hard and they don't necessarily have family that they have to worry about. But then the moment when family comes into it, then, you know, you got to rejig your priorities a little bit. Like you've only got a limited amount of hours in the day, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, from my boss, I also looked towards my brother, my next youngest brother, Peter. And he was working for Bob Jane, T-Mart, you know, the tyre
Tyres,
place. Yeah.
yep.
And he was successful, very successful at that. He was managing Tarrant Point, and then they opened up Bankstown. He was managing out of Bankstown, and he was very successful at doing that. And I wanted to try and emulate him. You know, as a younger sibling, I wanted to emulate my brothers.
Yep.
Which was not always a good thing, but anyway, so he was successful, and so I thought, yeah, I want to be successful, and I remember one of my the next oldest brother, his name is John. Mm-hmm. He had a friend, and he said to me, he said, "So what do you want in life? What do you think you want?" And I said, "I want to be successful to Peter. I want to be more successful than Peter." And he scoffed at that. He went, "Oh, I don't think so. I don't think that'll happen." And that just, I was never sporty. I was never athletic. I was never competitive. But that lit a competitive spark in my body, and that made me want to outdo my brother. So that was another spark to trying to think about where I was going to go in life. And so, yeah.
Isn't it funny? Like you see that, especially when you're coaching kids, right? Siblings.
Yep.
Like they just don't want to lose to each other.
No, of course not.
And it's one of those things that, you know, I say this about my kids all the time because I watch them in the training room and it's like my son could get thrown by a big kid and land on his head and it won't be a big issue. But his sister touches him and like, you know, puts him down and he's bumped his head and it's like the waterworks.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, there is something about that sibling rivalry. Like, I guess because you're so familiar with this person and you're there and you're so comfortable with them that it is a natural thing to feel competitive about it. Like I was the same with my brother. My brother was 7 years older than me.
Yep.
And like I would want to try and aspire to be as successful as him and do the things that he was doing and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, it only sort of occurred to me later in life that it's like, well, he's got a 7 year head start.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm comparing myself to him who's 7 years older than me when I should just be thinking about what do I look like in 7 years' time.
Yep, sure.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, for all my brothers, I mean, we had problems in our lives, but I looked up to those guys like they were gods.
Yeah.
They probably don't know it. I don't know if they do know it or not, but they were like gods to me. And my sister, of course, because my mother was working so much, she helped raise me, basically. Yeah. So she's like almost a surrogate mother to me, sort of thing. So, you know, it's really interesting. And she had a baby at a very young age, and my nephew, he was only 3.5 years younger than me, and so we grew up a lot together, like brothers. And so it was really an interesting dynamic there. And at one stage, we all lived in a 2-bedroom flat in Leichhardt. The whole lot of us.
All of you guys?
All of us.
Wow.
And then my brothers would bring home some people they met on the street and say, hey, they want to stay with us. And so they would stay there too. And
busy household, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, it was chaotic at times.
Okay. So then, so after working for the importer, and the reason why I find this interesting is because, obviously, dealing with you from the Alta perspective, right? It's always interesting when I have someone who runs a gym who also is like, from a marketing perspective, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. And that's experience, right? And that's why I'm curious about the background, right? Because I can see the translation of skills over time, like that when it comes to like the images and things like that, you got thoughts in terms of how you like it to be laid out. And that's probably coming from like some of the sign writing aspects, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then it's like certain other things when it comes to marketing. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then even like, so when I see Steve at all the shows, he, when he's not refereeing, of course, it's if he's there with his team, he's got his little camera, he's got his whole camera rig, and I'm like, mate, this guy's gear is better than mine, and like I'm meant to be like the guy that's doing content, so to speak. But that's why I'm curious about the background, because like the thing that I've sort of worked out from doing all these episodes, and even in my own life, right, is that there's no wasted experiences, only wasted opportunities to use those experiences in whatever new venture that you're doing. Right? Yeah. So after the importer, what happened after that?
Well, just going on that subject, as I said, I was a dumbass at school. Yeah. And if you had to put a mathematics book in front of me, I couldn't do it. I can do arithmetic, of course, because we didn't have calculators. When I went to school, calculators weren't allowed in the school. So we didn't have calculators. We had to do it all through our head and on paper. So I can still do arithmetic, but mathematics was horrible for me. I just couldn't get my head around it. And why did I need it? Like logarithms. Why would I ever need a logarithm ever? But anyway, so I wasn't very intelligent at school. But through my life, I found I learnt things like you just spoke about. I learnt little things from my dad about sign writing. I did like technical drawing at school, and did blow off I blew off an interview to go be a draftsperson.
Okay.
So I did like technical drawing, so I can draw really abstract, sharp lines. I like that sort of thing, where I'm not so creative like my dad was creative, just to think up a picture and draw it. I'm not that creative. And then going through life, as I learned things like working for that importer, I learnt what sold and what didn't sell, just by me giving stuff to the customers, because I was a storeman at that stage. I would give out the things, and I realised what was selling and what wasn't selling. Out of our whole warehouse, I knew exactly what was a good seller and what was a bad seller without them having to tell me. And so when I went on to selling stuff to, when I went into the managing shops, I had a bit of a personality where I could talk to people, so I did well like that. But I believed in the products because I knew the products, and I could sell the products pretty easily. I trusted the products because I used to see everything come back that was not good. Yeah. So I would sell what I believed was good and ignore what I thought was shit. And so I learned products, and so I was quite good at that. And then displays, I learned how to display things in a shop, which helps sell. So as you know, in the car game, you put your nice car out the front and it attracts the people. They come in, they look, they might buy a different car. Same. I would do the same. I would dress up a window and people would come in asking about that. I could guide them onto something else if that's what they wanted. But they walked around the shop and looked around the shop, so I was very good at that. So over the years, even though I call it like scholastic, where I'm not intelligent like that, I'm intelligent in other ways. And when I put my mind to something, I really work at it. So going from the importer, I went into I went into. I'm just trying to think if I went into couriering before I went into markets. No, I think I went into. Well, once again, I then worked as a sales rep as well for the same company, and I met a group of people around the traps, and I met a friend of mine who became a very good friend of mine in Minto, who owned a pawnbroker. So he owned his hock shop, and so I met him through the hock shop game and watched him develop his business, which I later went into. So as a sales rep, I once again met a lot of people, and so I got influenced by different people in that regard. I then went out and opened up. This is a problem with getting old, mate. You'll get this.
Also,
a
know
lot
the
of
feeling,
punches
right?
in the head, I think.
It all blends together.
Yeah,
and then,
So I worked as a courier for a while too. I think I had a hiatus from work. I was working at the market, so I opened up market stalls. I started selling stuff at markets. Once again, that was pretty successful for me because once again, I bought from that same company. I knew what sold, so I bought it and I sold it.
So what kind of products, out of curiosity?
All these cheap shops that you see running around.
The $2 discount stores.
A lot of that sort of shit, yeah.
Yep.
But, they had good products too. Cast areas, watches. I was good with watches. So I used to sell a lot of stuff at the markets.
So what, you just buy from where you're working?
Yeah, the importer.
And they were okay with you going and selling at the markets, or they didn't know?
Yeah, of course they were happy because
like,
they sold
Steve's
their
buying
stuff.
our stuff.
Yeah, of course. I bought quite a lot of stuff. And so, I just started doing market stalls, and I'd travel to, mostly at Menangle markets on the weekends, and I'd go to Canberra markets and travel to different markets around the place and sell my stuff,
Yeah, wow.
It was good, interesting. And then I became a courier because I got sort of sick of doing that. And then I decided to open up a shop.
Okay.
And it was a hock shop.
A pawn shop.
A pawn shop.
Yeah, well, pawn, P-A-W-N.
Yeah,
For anyone who's thinking that Steve's dealing in pornography.
That's the same joke everyone has.
Pawn, P-A-W-N.
Yeah, P-A-W-N, like porn stars on TV.
Yeah. So, wait, that's still a very misleading way to put it. But anyway,
I get that too.
There's got to be some good stories there because I guess the thing that I'm interested in when it comes to pawnbroking is like, how do you identify value?
A good question. When it's your money and you're giving it out to somebody, you make it good value. So like you have to learn about stuff real quick, because if not, you're giving out. Say on this mixer here.
Yep.
Say you come in and you say, I want $500, and you might have bought. Well, it's a Rhodes, so it's a good brand. But say you bought it for $200.
Yeah.
And you go, I want $500. If I don't know anything about it, I might look at it and go, wow, that's pretty fancy. I'll lend you $500. Straight away, I'm losing money.
Yep.
Yeah. So I have to have a broad knowledge of a lot of items. And then once the internet came along, made life a lot easier.
You can do your research.
Yeah, but we based our pricing from what we could get for the item. So when a person comes in, we give them a loan we would give them a loan, and if they didn't come back for it, in those days when I first started, we had to send the items to auction. So whatever the auction value was how much the item's worth. Okay. It's not. It could be worth $10,000, but if the auction value was only $1,500, then I'm only lending you $600. So that's how the pawn game works.
Wow.
Bit different today. I watched a lot of laws changed. I was in that business for 26 years.
Wow.
So for 26 years, I was a pawnbroker, had my own business, and for 20 of those years, I would go from there to here to teach people martial arts.
Yep.
So I also helped start a gym in Campbelltown too. That's another story.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. So I watched a lot of changes in the pawnbroking game where when cash converters first came to Sydney, I think they lobbied mostly to get the law changed so everything didn't have to go to auction, and then we could sell the stuff in our shops. And so that became a different thing again. We could lend more. So that's worth $1,500, say, second hand. I could lend you $1,000 knowing that I'm going to get $1,500 for it in 3 months' time.
So when it came to, so the way that it works, because I've never used any pawnbroking services, but essentially, so what happens is somebody will bring you something to get cash, obviously up front.
Yep.
And then the idea is that they would either then return by a specific date to pay you the money back plus interest.
Yes.
Or alternatively, you would then just sell the goods.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, pretty much it.
So then what would are there different styles of contract? Like what would be the minimum sort of time frame that you'd have to hold on to something? Because you then also need a big warehousing space, wouldn't you? To try and hold everything.
Yeah, I had a pretty large shop in Penrith. I went from a small shop to a medium shop to a large shop. And so basically people had 3 months to come and get their goods back. But what the interest was the interest was per month or any part of the month. So if you come in today and you got $1,000 on that and you go away and you put it in a poker machine, you win some money, you come back, you say, I want to get that out. It's not $1,000 anymore. It's $1,200. So it's 20% interest per month or any part of the month.
Yeah.
So then if someone didn't have all the money, they could come in and pay a month's interest and that would extend the loan 1 month.
Okay.
Which was really, it was good for the pawnbroker. It was good for the customer too, in the sense that they could keep their items going longer until they got that money to come back and get it out.
Yep. Yeah. And then I guess, was there ever any, you'd have some tough clients or some sub stories that would come through that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Are there any that spring to mind when I ask about that?
The first one is that my brother, when I was younger, my brothers used to take my sister's stuff and go and hock it at Newtown loan shop. There.
Oh, no. Shit.
Without her knowing,
Your poor sister.
So that's pretty common, as I found out when I owned my hock shop, that, siblings would steal their other siblings' stuff and come and hock it at my shop. There was heaps of stories. I was actually on a current affair at one stage with a story. And it was quite a good story. They did a good story on my shop and my customers, because you get regular customers too. Most of my customers were regulars, where they would walk in and have a chat with us, and we'd lend them the money on their goods. The next week they'd get their dole money. They would come and get the item out. The next week they'd bring it back. So because the people that use hock shops, the money burns a hole in their pockets. It's not people that are just destitute and poor. It's people that just live week to week, who spend their money, gambling, drinking, smoking. The sad stories are when I had a few old ladies come in where you just really, that was hard, when the old ladies would come in and hock their jewellery and then want to keep their jewellery and want to pay interest. And I'm a bit of a soft touch, and sometimes I would just give them their items back and just say, listen, that's it, we're square, see you later.
Yeah.
And they were the nice stories. But the hard ones are when the people would come in and hock their kids' stuff because they wanted to go and get some smokes, or they wanted to go get a drink, or they wanted to put it in a pokies or whatever. That was a tough one. That was hard. That hardens you up real quick. And then everyone bullshits to you. Yeah. You say, what are you hocking this for? And I say, I've got to get nappies for the kids. Yeah. And it pulls on the heartstrings a bit. But they didn't go buy nappies for the kids. They went and put it in a poker machine or drank it or put it in their arm, or something like that. So I became kind of immune to their stories. But they just spent money. They just spend their money. Yeah. I had a woman one day, this was not long before I sold it, and she was giving me a big sob story and how bad her husband was, and he was always spending their money, and she was broke, and she needed this for the kids and that for the kids. And I slipped into it. And then at the end I said something to her, and she said, yeah, and I've got to pay for Foxtel. And it brought me back to reality straight away. Like, how poor are you if you can afford Foxtel? Yeah. And I had Foxtel, and I think it was like $100 a month or something, and it was killing me. And here's a person that was claiming that she was broke and had Foxtel, and that was pretty sad. And I could see her kids there, and you you feel for the kids. I feel for the kids.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know I had drug addicts I dealt with, some working drug addicts, the functioning drug addicts and who would bring in their musical equipment, musos. And one day I said to this guy, listen, you get all your stuff out, you're a really good customer. I said, but I feel really bad because I'm giving you money and I know where it's going. And he said, listen, Steve, he said, I'm going to get the money. He said, if you don't take my stuff, I'll just take it to the next hock shop. And I went, righto, how much do you want? That was it. And that was true, that was true.
They're going to find a way irrespective,
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I did a podcast with Ian Schaffer.
Oh, yeah.
And he's running like the street buffet and things like that. And he was telling me the story about, when he first started going out there, he was like, I'm going to help these people and this and that. And then he, it caused more fights than anything else.
Yep.
Because some people just don't want to be helped.
That's right.
But, if you can create a connection with people, just like almost in the way, like, and I know it's in a different lane, but your connection with Eddie, right? Like it allowed you to see a different alternative.
Yep.
Right. To working hard and to seeing like these other influences that you can actually draw from, right? And you won't get that if you go in there with that mentality of like, like the person has to come to the realization themselves.
Yep.
And just like you said, Eddie didn't even know that he had that impact on you.
Yep.
Right. But for you, it was like profound because it was just
absolutely.
And so it's the same thing. I think, with a lot of these, whether it's drugs or anything, any of those sorts of negative things, it's like people are going to find a way.
Yep.
Right. And so, it's probably why I sort of lean more towards the decriminalisation element, just simply because people are going to find a way anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
So you might as well try and find a way to make it a bit safer.
Yep.
Or make it above board and the government loves their taxes, so collect the tax revenue on it and then, reinvest that in a responsible way, which could go back into education programs or something like that, as opposed to just, you try and outlaw it, but then people still find a way anyway. And then all you're doing is you're lining, criminal activities of gangs and triads and everything else, right?
Yep, yep.
So, but yeah, like I think that's I actually quite, I think that was a pretty powerful story in the sense of, you felt bad for this guy, but he's like, I'm going to get it anyway. Yeah. So, you might as well take my money, otherwise, or take my goods, or I'll just,
Well, he also trusted me too. He knew I would look after his stuff. I looked after everyone's stuff.
Yeah, it's a value exchange.
Yeah,
right?
but some hock shops, they don't care.
Yeah.
I packed, video recorders in plastic bags and put them on the shelf and I looked after their stuff. I looked after everyone's stuff. So he knew that and he trusted me, but he would still go somewhere else if he needed the money. Yeah. Going back to Eddie, so Eddie never tried to change me. Eddie wasn't there trying to educate me. I just went along with him. I just rode his coattails, so to speak, and I learnt that way. And sometimes you need that lecture, and sometimes you don't need that lecture. You just need to be going along with that person. So Brian came up to me yesterday on Sunday at the seminar, and he said, "Oh, good to see you on the mat, coach." And I thought, "Oh, that's a funny thing to say, because I'm on the mat all the time." Now I'm nowhere near what I used to be. Like, in fact, I've had a lot of injuries for jiu-jitsu that stopped me from training in jiu-jitsu a lot. But I'm in there punching bags, I'm in there kicking the bags, I'm in there doing my combat classes with the people, just so they can, it happened. In Alta, Daniel Leite, he won his fight, So,
he beat our technical director, DY.
Suck eggs.
Shout out to DY though.
No.
It was a good fight. And it's always, the thing that I love the most about the Alta finales, or like when the guys fight, is like afterwards you always see like the two competitors getting a beer together, doing that kind of stuff, introducing them to each other's kids. And it's
Unreal.
Like that sort of stuff, you don't always get at every fight show, especially if there's like a little bit of, rivalry or bad blood or anything.
He's an unreal guy. Unreal guy. I don't know if you noticed, but in the cage, I go up and always have a talk to the people who lost too.
Yep.
I don't know if that's just my refereeing, my compassion for those people, my empathy for them, but I try and encourage them to go forward.
Yep.
The kid that got knocked down in Melbourne from one of my fighters, I don't know if you noticed, but I abandoned my fighter who was celebrating in the cage and went and refereeing took over, and I went and consoled this kid and helped get him up and get him out of that cage, and then talked to him throughout the night to the point where as I was walking out, and he just touched me on the arm and he said, "I just want to thank you." And I don't do it for thanks, but it's just to encourage that kid.
Yeah.
And it's not by just words, it's by showing. That was my point with Eddie. I learnt from him by just being with him and just going along that ride. But I'm on the mat all the time, and I make plenty of mistakes. I'm a lot slower than I used to be. The jiu-jitsu, it kills me now because I'm not as competitive as I used to be. But I'm on the mat.
Yeah.
Like in Alta, I said, okay, we're going to run. There's a hill across the road. You can attest to that in a minute. I said, we're going to run up this hill. I ran with them. I didn't stand there and watch them. I ran with them.
Yeah.
As much as it hurt me,
I'm
out there leading by example. And Daniel Leite said to me, he said, far out, he said, some days I just thought, Jesus Christ. He thought, but I look at you, you old bastard, and I can't quit because you're older than me and you're still going. Yeah. And that's how I am.
It's funny though. And I think, because when I was doing a lot more coaching, it would be like, people would look at me, especially like say younger teens or like people in their 20s, and I wasn't much older than them at the time, but they'd be like, oh, I can't do this. And like, well, I'm not asking you to do anything that I can't do.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, but you're you. And it's like, people would say that when it comes to whether it's like you look at somebody that's in that particular role that you want, maybe someone that you aspire to sort of learn from or be like. And then a lot of the times there'd be people out there that go, oh, well, I could never get there. Well, you're right, because you're the one that's telling you that you could never get there.
Yep.
Right. Whether you can or you can't, well, that's completely up to you.
Yes.
Right. And so I always find that very interesting. But I think, the couple of things that I think, in your examples there that you're talking about is leadership. And what does leadership mean? Well, leadership means that you're the leader.
Yep.
Right. And as the leader, well, you're leading.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's the difference between, I guess, being a manager and being a leader, is that when you're a leader, you're trying to lead from the front foot.
Yep.
And I think the other thing that I think that, I guess the other part that I thought was really important, what you were saying there is it's about that culture that you instill as well. So, having Eddie who was there and you're riding his coattails, it's like you're in this environment where that made you want to be that particular way. And I can give you an example, like from my own career as well. Like when I started in the automotive industry, I started as an apprentice mechanic.
Okay.
And there was another guy, Rami Salami, that's what we used to call him. But
great.
He's the happiest Lebanese guy you'll ever meet. Like he's like, like there's different like when you look at Arabs, there's like, there's Arabs that look angry all the time, and there's Arabs that look happy all the time. Yeah. He's the jovial, happy Lebo. Right? There's no other way for me to describe Rami. But
I love it.
So Rami and I, we started our apprenticeship at the same time, and Rami's he's a big boy. Like he's probably 100-something kilos, and still in the automotive industry, beautiful person. And like the thing about Rami was that he was always a hard worker.
Yep.
Right. And like even like he'd finish his apprenticeship, like working at the dealership, and then he'd be working like stacking shelves at Woolies or whatever at night. I still remember to this day, and we used to talk about it. For me, I was studying, so that was my thing. But he would go off and work a second job.
Yep.
Right. And it was to the point where like it was funny because like in the workplace, like the workshop managers would sort of be like, oh, you two guys are just always talking, right? But we'd be talking about like, like G'ing each other up about work. Yep. We'd be competing. When I say competing, similar to the way you and Eddie used to do it, right? Like who can move the shelves or whatever the fastest. We'd be trying to service the cars faster than each other.
Yep.
And we'd be like competing on the job side of thing. And it would make the day go so fast.
Oh, yeah.
But it was just, like I find that interesting is because like, I would say, because of Rami, like we work so hard at that dealership.
Yeah.
For no other reason than just like a little bit of competitiveness between us. Like, if we were working in the quick service bays, there was 2 car hoists there, and we'd be like, chalking them up, like trying to go 1 for 1, tit for tat, and then like by the end of the day, it's like, oh, we service like 18 cars each, kind of a thing. And when I reflect back on that, it's like it's crazy. Like there was no other motivation other than the motivation he and I brought to that little endeavor, right?
That's the same as me and Eddie. Yeah. In fact, when I was talking to you earlier, and you were telling me some of your stories, I was thinking how similar our stories are in a lot of regards, and there's another one.
Yeah, it's just translation, different industry.
Yep.
But like, the fact that there's that kind of energy that can resonate is
absolutely.
like, doesn't matter what industry you could be in. You could be, if it was like being a store person, picking and packing shelves.
That's right.
But you have that guy that's there that is a good mate or whatever, a friend. and you're both competing on it just because it's like a bit of fun.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gets the job done, and as you said, it makes the time go quick, and you become more efficient.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm a big one for that. In fact, like I said, I train in my combat classes where we do it's more like a kickboxing class really, but I disguised it like that so that the girls that were doing it didn't think it was a kickboxing class. Anyway, so we're kicking and punching each other. We make contact with each other, but certain people make contact with certain people, and others don't want contact. No contact. It's good fun like that. And I get just as much work out with a person that doesn't want the contact because I start going back to refining my technique, and so I get something out of everyone. So doing Ross's seminar the other day, I'm happy to take away 1% of something that I didn't know. Yeah, well, he taught me he taught the catch drills the other day with the kicks, which I know, except for the switch catch, where we catch it this way. I didn't know that. Yep. And I was loving that. I just thought that was great. So
yeah. Shout out to Ross. He's I'll get him on the podcast at some point in the future as well. But Ross Pearson, former UFC fighter. Hey, you probably ref some of his fights, have you? I
don't think I have refed Ross before. I don't think so. I've been around him quite a bit because I worked the Ultimate Fighter in the Smashers series, and he was the opposing coach to the Aussie team. So I was around him then. I see him, of course, at UFC events, and he's got teams that go into UFC now. I see him around a bit. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, if you want to check out those kinds of seminars, it is trainalta.com, and plenty of value there.
Oh, Christ, yeah. This is a downfall in Alta.
Yeah. Here we go.
Yeah.
Lay it on me.
Yeah, lay it on you.
It's on my podcast at the moment, so so work. You can't come after me. I am supporting you. Look, you can check out the shirt. So I am supporting. So
no, I blame Richie Walsh then. Let's blame Richie. He's not here.
Go.
I never realised that the seminars that Alta was putting on was free for the competitors.
Yep.
That's a massive selling point.
Yeah.
I mean, that is huge. I don't know about yourself, but I paid a lot of money to do seminars around this place.
Yeah.
And then when I learnt that this is a part of their package, I'm like, holy shit. Because a lot of people initially look at Alta and go, oh, it's expensive. And I go, hang on. Let's break it down. How much is it per day? What are you getting for that? You're getting the experience of a lifetime. But then now to throw in seminars, and most of them last season was with UFC fighters.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yep. Josh, Richie, Brian, who else we had? We had Jeff Chan from MMA Shredded. We had, who else? I've missed somebody.
Yep.
I missed.
Knockout. Knee. Masvidal. Knocked him out.
Oh, Ben Askren, yeah, that's a huge one, right? Like, so,
good work, Ben.
Shit.
Yeah.
I
bet you that gets cut. That'll get cut out.
One of the things that I find to be crazy when it comes to a guy like Ben Askren, right, is like such great wrestling accolade, great wrestling coach, great wrestler, full stop, right? And because of that one particular moment in the UFC, right, like the keyboard warriors, come after me for this, but whatever. The fact that people can try and diminish what Ben Askren or who Ben Askren is for the sake of that one moment. It's one moment. It's just like in any fight, there's always going to be a winner and a loser, unfortunately, unless there's a majority draw, or a no contest, which I think, in Steve's supposed 253 ref fights, there's only been I think you had 3 draws and maybe one no contest or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember them.
But that's not even all the fights, right? So
no. But keyboard warriors. Yeah. Can I swear?
Yeah, go.
Fuck you, cunts. Mate, you're kidding me. You people are kidding me, aren't you?
Yeah. So
now you used to just give them microphones, and now you used to do podcasts and stuff like that. I caught up. There's one guy. I don't normally. I do buy into things, but anyway, he was on YouTube talking about the UFC. I'm a massive advocate for the UFC, of course, and it's not just because they hire me. I really believe in the UFC. Was crapping on about the stoppage.
Which one?
I'm just trying to think which one.
Male or female?
Male.
Male.
Anyway, it'll come to me. Herzog stoppage. His recent, there's a big controversy over Herzog. And this guy went on to say how he basically thought the UFC had an agenda. I'm sure they do. The agenda is to make money. They have this agenda, and they're controlling the fights, and they're controlling the referees. I went on, and then he's saying, I've been in this game for 20 years. And I'm saying, mate, if you've been in this game for 20 years, you would know that all this that you're saying is all bullshit. And it's all bullshit. And I can't stand people like that. They're just doing this sensationalism to get their name out there so that they can look like someone. I don't know why, but anyway. And because I go work for the UFC, I get my assignment half an hour to an hour before I have to go referee fights. So I have no idea who I'm refereeing. And that assignment comes from Mark Ratner. And it doesn't have anything to do with Dana White. It comes from Mark Ratner. There is no influence from any of the UFC staff or the commission, if they're commissioning their own events. No influence from them who they want to win or what I should do or what I shouldn't do. There's no influence whatsoever. And here's this bozo. He used to be a keyboard warrior. Obviously, he's got a mic now, and so he's on YouTube crapping on it like this, and people are buying into it. Oh, fucking Jesus.
So, okay, we've made the segue.
Sorry.
No, let's get into the refereeing. So, I guess, where did that start, or how did that start?
Okay, let's go back to Eddie first.
Okay.
So here's Eddie. He's introduced me to Hapkido. So I was training in Hapkido, then I had the break, and then I went back to Hapkido.
Yep.
So I'm training away. I get my black belt in Hapkido, and I start looking around and seeing what else is there to do out there. I start doing seminars with different people, Professor Wally J, Professor Don Jacob, and then I met this bloke who was talking about Walt Missingham and Jeet Kune Do, and he said, "Hey, there's a seminar coming up for ground fighting." And I went, "Right, okay, what's that?" And so I thought, I'll go along to this, and so off I go. Carlos Gracie Jr., I think it was at North Sydney Police Boys Club back in 1995. I did the seminar, and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. I like this, it's all hands-on. At the end of it, we had to wrestle. Here's a bunch of people. They separated black belts in judo and people that had done some sort of wrestling. They separated them from the plebs like me, who thought I knew what I was doing, and I didn't. And so they threw us into this wrestling match, and I wrestled a couple of big guys, and it was hard, thrashing around, cuts all over you. It was great fun. I loved it. And then I come up against a girl who was, how heavy are you?
68 kilos.
Should have been 58 kilos.
Okay.
Black belt in judo. Got on my back. Oh no, first got side control. I bench pressed her. I tried to throw her off. I couldn't get her off. I sat up. She got my back. And I remember thinking, far out, what is going on here? And next thing, she's tapping me out with a rear naked choke. And there's two thought methods here. And the first thought method is, if I was using all my strength and punches and kicks, I couldn't take her out. Well, there's a second method, which I took on board. Far out. If she can do that to me, imagine what I can do to others.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it right there and then. Yeah. This girl tapped me out like nothing.
Yeah.
And so from there, I went to my next seminar, which was Jean-Jacques Machado, and I met John Will and Richard Norton at the seminar. They were helping Jean-Jacques. They brought him out. And so I met John Will, who come up and he was teaching me stuff, and I fell in love with it. So I started just doing John Will seminars, and that's how I started in jiu-jitsu. Cut a long story short, years later, I'm under John Will now, and I'm teaching jiu-jitsu. And I started I've been to a few comps, and I decided I'd start reffing in jiu-jitsu comps. And so I was on the circuit a bit doing that, reffing jiu-jitsu for the Brazilians and everything. And then I saw that they'd started, by this time MMA hit hit the scene. And so when the first MMA show happened in New South Wales, I think not really the first, but the first locally produced one was with John Pedro, and it was at Panthers, and I didn't get there, but I heard it was kind of funny. It was a bit of a farce, and I was knocking around town, and this girl come in and saw me at my shop, and she was talking to me, and I said, "Hey," I said, "You know John, don't you?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "How do you get into that refereeing?" And she said, "Do you want to be a referee, do you?" And I said, "Oh, I wouldn't mind giving it a go." So she said, "I'll let him know." And so through that, they were going to have a show. John Pedro was going to have a show. That's Tyson's dad. Was going to have a show, another show, and it fell through for some reason. And Lucy Tui ended up running the show, and it was at the Whitlam Centre, and it was in a ring. And I had a guy fighting on that card, and then so after he fought, I took off that shirt and put on a refereeing shirt. And I was already a brown belt, I think, in jiu-jitsu. I'd been doing stand-up striking, a lot of my life then. And I really thought I knew what was going on. And so I reffed a bunch of people in that fight card. And they liked me because I didn't just stop the fight just because I saw a bit of blood. And then when I see that fight back, I think, holy shit, I didn't know anything. I knew nothing. I'm there reffing, I reffed the main event that night, first night.
No pressure.
No pressure. There was no pressure. Fabio Galeb versus Hector Lombard. Anyone who knows Hector's a wrecking machine. I reckon I reffed Hector the most out of anyone. Here's me sort of almost leaning on the ropes watching Hector bash Fabio Galeb. And because Fabio's arms were up, I thought he was fighting back. Little did I know, he's just going into unconsciousness. Yeah. Anyway, so I finally stopped the fight. No one complained. There was no keyboard warriors. And no one complained. No one whinged. And I went away thinking, oh, yeah, that was fun. So then Luke Pizzuti was running a show in 2007 called CFC. And he asked me to come and work on that show. And I started looking around thinking, I don't know. After seeing that fight back, I thought, I actually don't know enough about this MMA stuff, so the rules. So I looked around, contacted the New South Wales government, contacted people in Queensland. Cameron Quinn was really the first MMA referee in Australia. And no one knew anything. No one could tell me the rules. No one knew anything. No one could accredit me. So I thought, what's the next best thing? I better contact Big John McCarthy. So I emailed Big John McCarthy, and sure enough, he said, I'm thinking about running a course. And I said, great. Time went by. I kept on hounding him, as I do. When are you running this course? When are you running this course? And he finally gave me a date in November. And I said, right, I'm coming. And he probably thought, yeah, sure, you will, you bozo. And so I flew over to LA and completed Big John's very first ever
refereeing course,
MMA refereeing and judging course.
Wow.
And I said to him when I got there, I said, listen, if I don't pass, this is just me, if I don't pass, don't worry, I'll come back. So don't just chuck me a pass because I'm here, I'll come back. And he said, no, I never would anyway. And it was a 2-day course. It was really, really good. Yep. And for those who don't know Big John, he helped write the rules. He helped write the unified rules and was the most prolific MMA referee at that time. Fantastic guy, great referee. I thought he was a great referee. Commanded in the cage. He gave his authority and fighters listened to him. So he was great, and I loved his course. And I come back, I remember scratching my head in LA thinking, holy shit, how am I going to remember all this stuff? I can't. Sure enough, when I come back and was on CFC, it all flooded back straight away. Yeah. So then I started implementing other things like inspectors in the change rooms and training judges on how to judge fights and other referees. I started training other referees as well. And so, not that anyone would know, but in those days I was like the person who knew everything for MMA refereeing, the officiating side. And so that's how it sort of came about. Oh, and then, so I was refereeing, and then I was in touch with Mark Ratner, who is the vice president of the UFC for regulatory affairs, meaning that he goes into a country and sets it up so that they can go in and run a show. And he was the one who hires all the referees and the officials for UFC. I shouldn't have said his name, should I? Now every Tom, Dick and Harry will be hitting him up.
They got to find his details though.
It's not hard.
Okay, shit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Maybe I'll.
Sorry, Mark Ratner. And sure enough, I badgered him enough, sent him videotapes of me refereeing and stuff like that. And so when they came to Australia, he hired me to be the first ever Australian referee
There you
for the
go.
UFC.
So that was in Brian. Was that Brian's one?
No, Brian was, I think,
second
in
one.
127.
Yeah.
That was 2010, UFC
Who was
1,
on that card?
110.
110.
First fight was Jamie Tahuna versus Igor Prokrat.
Yep.
The main event, I cannot remember. Who knows?
Was that where was George Soteropoulos on that card?
I don't.
Or was he on the 127 card?
I think he was on 127. I'm not sure who made it. I can't remember.
Anyway.
Too many punches in the head.
Yeah.
But I ref the very first fight, which was Igor Prokrat versus Jamie Tahuna. And I remember, and it's a small circuit in Australia, so I'd met all the fighters. And I remember Jamie Tahuna's brother yelling at me in between rounds, "You're standing them up too fast, you're standing them up too fast," and just yelling at me. I just ignored him, as I do. And then Jamie broke his wrist. Well, Jamie didn't break it, Igor broke it for him with a head kick, and Jamie blocked it and it busted his wrist. So I didn't even know because you couldn't tell. And Jamie continued on fighting with it. You just didn't know. Jamie got Igor down, knocked him down, jumped on top of him, was punching Igor in the head with his broken wrist, so to speak. And I remember it very distinctly. I was standing over the top of them. No one else could see this. And Jamie's punching him in the head, and I think it was 9 unanswered shots I counted then and there, and I watched Igor's eyes roll to the back of his head. His eyes just rolled, and I stopped the fight. And Joe Rogan, thanks Joe, walked into the cage and says to Jamie, "I think that was a premature stoppage. What do you think?" And I was, of course, and all the keyboard warriors, Perceval prematurely stopped the fight, because you couldn't see it on camera. Yeah. But anyway, I don't care. I don't care what keyboard warriors say. They don't worry me. And so that brought a bit of notoriety and sort of affected me a little bit in the sense fuck that. How does he know? I was standing right there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was my first break into UFC.
There you go.
And 2014, I'm still working for the UFC, reffing fights. So you keyboard
2024,
warriors.
you mean?
Oh, 2024.
You shortcut yourself 10 years.
Too many punches in the head, mate. Keyboard warriors, stick that in your hat.
When it comes to the refereeing side, right, I think even the UFC, right, when we think about MMA in general, right, there's more, I think we're more understanding of letting people work when the fights hit the ground now, right?
Yep.
Sure. So that's something that's probably like a bit of a contrast to, in the past, right? It would be like, okay, you're not doing anything, let's get you back up, let's keep going. Whereas nowadays it's like the general sentiment is like, okay, you got the fight to go, mate, you're the guy on the bottom, you fucking get up.
That's right.
Right?
That's 100%. And being a jiu-jitsu referee helped me with that, because in the States when I was with John, he would ask a question and I would stick my hand up and answer it, because basically it was jiu-jitsu refereeing. You don't just stand people up. You don't take them out of position.
Yeah.
So I would answer the questions knowing the points and everything like that. And so when it was time to stand someone up, it was basically when there was not just no action, it was when they were in a neutral situation and there was no action, and you ask them to work and they don't work. That's when you break them up and stand them up. So a lot of people think positions are boring and that it should be stood up. That's the worst thing you can do. Like, here's a guy who's fought his way in, somehow got the other guy down, and he might be caught in half guard, which is close to neutral, and it's not an action-packed fight, and people are yelling, stand him up, ref, stand him up, ref. It's not my job to let the person underneath out. It's his job to get out of that.
Yeah.
It's not my job to let him out. And by letting him out, I would take away the advantage of the guy who got him there in the first place, which is huge. So, yeah, I'm very aware of that. So when the crowd yells, stand him up, or when the crowd yell anything, I just ignore them.
Yeah.
It's pretty good like that.
Yeah, like I think and I think the best referees would, right? Like I think, it's only when especially when a referee's probably doing like their first few matches and things like that.
Did you say the best referees?
I said the best referees would.
Yeah, that's right. The best referees. So the best. You heard it. You heard it first. Yeah.
But do you want to change it? I'll say the better referees.
No editing. Thank you.
The better referees would.
No, the best referees would. I agree.
But yeah, there is an element like especially when cornering, right? Like when you're cornering and like there's a I laugh because some of the teams that I really I'm close with, there's been fights where I can tell that the corners they're cornering certain things to like try and get the referee to bite. And there's a I don't know if this clip ever got released, but there was one where Herb was one of the guys was like yelling at Herb, and then Herb goes, "Mate, settle down, corner your fighter, don't corner me." Yeah. And I just pissed myself laughing. I just find it funny.
See, here's the similarity. I took a guy, one of my black belts, to Melbourne in the Pan Packs, and he's got guard and there's nothing happening. There's no points. And I just said to this guy, Richard, attack his neck, mate. Attack him. Get cross lapel choke. Attack him. If he defends, the referee has to give you an advantage. He's got no choice. So I'm coaching the referee now. Yeah. And so Richard attacks him. And I'm going, keep going. He's going to defend it. You're going to get the advantage. Sure enough, the bell goes, the referee does the advantage signal. Richard wins the fight.
Yeah.
And so years later, Richard's now cornering a fighter and he's trying to do the same to me as I'm in the cage reffing his fighter. And I just laughed and I snickered and I went, that's not working on me, you idiot. I'm the instigator.
Yeah.
Yes, that happens a lot. And, like I've had plenty of wars with cornermen. Back in the day, CFC days, Alex Prades and Bernardo Treco, those poor guys. We used
Shout out to Prats and Treco.
Oh my God, we used to fight them and me, because they always wanted to get that edge. So if there was supposed to be 3 people in the corner, they would have 4, and of course, I have that authority, and I wielded it like a big stick. That's why probably a lot of fighters think I'm an arsehole. But I would go around to them and I'd go, listen, you can only have 3 in the corner. And they'd go, oh, come on, Steve, come on. I go, no, fuck you. You can only have 3. It'd end up a fight, and then I'd be like, that's it. I'm going to stop this fight and deduct a point from your fighter. And they'd go, okay, you go back there, you go back there. One night, Alex was there, and he walked around the cage and sat in the front row of the audience. And I go, Alex. So I go over to him and he goes, Steve, what are you doing? I'm in the audience. I go, Alex, you can't be here. You're a trainer. You're coaching your fighter from the other angle. He's like, no, Steve. I said, get back to the change rooms, Alex. Get back over to your own corner. We laugh about it now, but at one stage, I think he wanted to bash me, which is, that's okay. I don't mind. I can fight a little bit, but yeah, he wanted to bash me, and so there was always that aspect of refereeing too.
Yeah.
Because I brought in all the rules and I brought in everything. I brought in everything.
Yeah. Well, even when it comes to judging, right? It's the same thing. You hear it like the corners will be like, it's just like the reason why in Muay Thai fights they go oi whenever the kicks land or the knees like oi oi, and it's like trying to, even though like it might have been blocked or whatever. Like, you want to give that impression that it's landing.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And then from some angles, like I sit cage side, all the time at the events when I'm either doing commentary or ring announcing. And some angles, like you think, oh shit, that shot looks like it's landing, but then you watch the screen,
Yep.
and it's like, oh, it actually didn't land.
Yeah.
Right. So it is hard. Like I do feel for the judges, and you know, sometimes when there are those split decisions, it could be because of those angles and those different, like slightly different variances in terms of what they're seeing on one side versus from a different angle, you can see the shot wasn't clean.
Oh, absolutely. When I do my judging course, I say to people, I say, you cannot, what's the word I'm looking for? Assume that punch landed. If you're looking at the fighter's back and he's throwing down a punch, you can't assume that's landing. Same as when he's standing, you can't assume that's landing. What if he moves? What if he blocks it, you know? So you can't assume those. You have to see them. Now, the UFC, see, a lot of people won't know this, the UFC actually have small screens so that when the judge's vision is obscured by the referee, by the pole, the fighter's back, they can flick to the screen. And in fact, if ever you watch me at a UFC and I'm watching a show, I'll go, I can't see, and I'll look at the big screen straight away. So, you know, like they have those little screens to assist them because it's still, it's not perfect. It's the best system we got. Yeah. And you know what? The judges, this is where keyboard warriors, once again, the judges are watching, they're not watching the fight, they're scoring the fight. They're scoring the techniques. So they're assessing what is the most significant techniques, what are the most effective techniques in that fight, in that round actually. So it's really interesting that people go, oh, well, I scored it this way, and how did you score it? You scored it this way, you got multiple camera angles, and you're watching a slow-mo replay in between the rounds. The judges don't have that. They get to watch it once. Referees don't have that. We watch it once, and we have to react instantly. Yeah. So, you know, tooting my own horn here. So, you know, protecting myself. But, you know, like everybody watches it, and they watch it from all these different angles, and the slow-mo replays. And I'm always saying, mate, we don't have that in the cage. Yeah. We get to see it at live action, and sometimes it's like split second where I show the person throws a punch, the other person turns here, they get copped, they fall down, and everyone goes, oh, Perceval is a bit slow to react. That's because I'm trying to catch up, you know, of what just happened. That person was in front of me, and, you know, it happens a lot, and it happens to the judges. And they get caned. They get caned brutally, especially when it's a close round. When it's a one-sided round and they get it wrong, and you think, oh, how did they get that wrong?
That's corruption.
Oh, that's going back to my mate, who's the UFC. No, but it's a tough thing. I don't like judging. I don't like judging very much. It's tricky. But I always draw the line. And here's a question I ask. Was there any controversial fights that you saw just recently?
What, you doing Alta?
In judging. Anyway.
Oh, look, of course. In Alta, we had like quite a few split decisions.
No, but what that you thought, oh, I think the judges got it wrong in that stage. You know, you don't have to mention a promotion or anything.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay. So did you think that went to the wrong fighter?
Yeah, that happens.
Okay. So was the scoring very confusing for you? Like, was you...
No, there's been times where, like, you know, like especially if I'm watching an event live and I'm whether ring announcing or commentary. Yeah. Like I've had a judge beside me ask me, you know, like when a split decision's being announced, and then after I come back to the table after I've made the announcement, and they're like, "Which way did you have it?" And I said, "This is the way I saw it." Yeah. And then it's like, okay. Yeah. So then, like they, you know, they just want to like I think everybody wants to confer notes, right? Like they want to try, because from the view, at least from the view that I was watching, so like on the table that I'm of. From that angle, what did I see? And then I told him what I saw. And like that particular judge agreed with me. But obviously somebody on the other side might have seen something slightly different. Exactly, and it's the angles, right?
Exactly right. That's why I have 3 judges at different points of the cage. Yeah. So, you know, often Dana will get up and he'll say, oh, I scored it completely different. He's not actually scoring a fight. When have you ever seen Dana sitting there looking at the fight going, oh, he threw that punch, He's usually talking over here and, oh, yeah, and hey, g'day, and how you going? I was watching it. Like, he's not actually scoring the fight. But a really simple method is, if it's a really close round, is ask yourself, which fighter would you prefer to be?
Yeah.
And that's a really great method of coming up with because of this. It's not, I just prefer to be Pereira, you know. It's because Yeah, because
You
I didn't
land.
want to be on the end of that head kick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if that's, usually you come up and you say, which is the fighter I'd prefer to be because of this reason? And that usually tells you a story if you're watching the overall fight. So, yeah.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, I've never really thought about it like that. Which fighter would you rather be?
Yeah, but you usually come up with the reason why you want to
be that.
Yeah, not just, I really like John Jones. I really want to be John Jones.
I sort of party like John Jones.
Oh, yeah.
I'm joking. I've got 4 kids.
He's probably got more, but anyway.
The other thing I wanted to talk about with refereeing is, right, like when you think about, like, say, if you know a fighter has like a lot of scar tissue as an example, and so then they have a tendency to bleed. Let's use Nate D as an example, right? Does that weigh into your factors when you know how because like that fighter is a durable fighter, so to speak? Would that change the way that you think about, like, you know, when to call a fight off?
A lot of people say, for amateur fighters, pro fighters, and this guy's tougher and that guy's not as tough, and like you just asked about the scar tissue. I judge every fight on its merit, on what's going on in that fight.
Yeah.
So scar tissue cuts open, bleeds a bit. I don't get fazed by blood too much. I don't know if you see. I'll digress. Mark Hunt versus Bigfoot. I stopped the fight. I had to look. I'd already made a plan to stop the fight to check this cut. Mark steps back. I stop the fight. Bigfoot turns to me and he goes like this. And it's like if someone got a spray bottle of blood all over me. I can't react. I'm in the cage. So I take him to the doctor. The doctor looks at it. He's okay. So I don't get affected by blood. So if he's got a cut up here and it's bleeding, I'm not worried too much. It's when it's on his eyelid, when it's in a dangerous part that I start to get concerned, how deep the cut is, how wide the cut is. That's when I worry about it. But I judge every fight on its merit. I got highly ridiculed for Hector Lombard versus Neil Magny. And I still believe I got it right, but anyway, a lot of people don't. But anyway, it doesn't matter. And so I know how Hector got to that position where he was. And it wasn't through a knockout. It wasn't through a knockdown, I mean. He escaped. He was exhausted. He ended up in that position from an exhausted. Had he been knocked down under Neil Magny, it wouldn't have lasted anywhere near as long as that. I wouldn't have let it go as long as that. So there's certain circumstances that happen in a fight where you become heightened and you get ready to move in quickly. So there's different circumstances, but I judge them all in the same.
Yep.
Alta say that we don't want the person to take unnecessary damage, and so we understand that, and I'll move in. But if he's still got some fight left in him, and I don't mean the very last bit of fight left in him, if he's still fighting back, then I'm going to let it continue to see where it goes, but I'm going to protect him still.
Yeah, always. I think, on the amateur scene, it's like we always, even I think a lot of the times in the rules meetings, we say, hey, if it's an Alta fight or if it's your first time or whatever, like, you got to show us that you want to be in there.
Absolutely.
If you give the signals that, hey, you're tapping out kind of thing, or you're not tapping out like physically, but tapping out mentally, or you turn your back, right? They're generally pretty clear signs that you don't want to be there, right? And so you can't blame the referee if they jump in to try and protect you, because at the end of the day, if you want to make a career of it, you don't want to be taking excessive damage in your first 5 fights. Save it to when you're a pro and there's actually money on the line, or there's something on the line that's worthwhile. Same thing with jiu-jitsu comps, right? Don't go and get your arm broken for the sake of a medal or something like that. Like, go back and then refine and work out how did you end up in that position, and take the technical lessons away from that. And then, maybe if it's a world title or something, you might let your arm get broken if you can still win the fight. I think that's Jacare, tucking his arm into his gi.
But also a lot of people don't realise, as a referee, what I do before I get those fighters in the cage. I go and talk to every fighter that I'm refereeing. And I lay down the most common fouls and tell them I don't want to see those fouls, because they can cause a deduction of points. And it can ultimately cost them the fight. But then I also give them my commands of what I say in the cage and then what I expect them to do when they hear those commands. You know, like if I say don't grab the fence, I expect them to let go of the fence. You know, if I say, come on guys, I want to see some work here, that means that they're in a neutral position, and if they don't do something, then I'm gonna separate them. And then I have a final one where I say, okay guys, fight back. That means I'm gonna stop the fight. And if you hear me say that, I'm gonna stop the fight. You need to show me you're still in that fight. You need to move, you need to fight back, you need to show me something. And just covering and turning away, as you said, is not adequately defending yourself. So I'll stop the fight then. So, but it usually comes off a knockdown, and it's usually very, very quick. It's like fight back, bang, stop the fight.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you don't even get to say it. You just have to stop the fight.
Yeah. Any sort of funny stories from you know, the UFCs or anything like that might be worthwhile to share?
Funny stories.
Yeah.
Funny stories.
Funny good, funny bad.
Funny stories. Herb Dean can't freaking walk down the street with the man.
Yeah, he's pretty noticeable.
Why? Why is it?
He's a big black dude with dreads, right?
No, I do have a funny story now that you said that.
Go.
Okay, we're in Korea. Me and Herb and Greg Clanjans, we're walking down through a subway, and this little Korean man stops us, and he goes, "Oh!" He goes, I know you, to Herb, not to me or Greg. He goes, I know you. And we're thinking, fuck, here we go again. And he goes, you Bob Marley. If you don't know who Bob Marley is, look him up, and now look up Herb Dean.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I took Herb Dean and Leon Roberts. Leon Roberts is a UK referee. He's now a commissioner. I took them on the Harbour Bridge, the whole climb, and we all got in our funny little suits, dressed up, photographs. I got a picture of Herb Dean, might have been Leon, choking me out on the Harbour Bridge. I'm raising Leon Roberts' hand on the Harbour Bridge, you know, at the top of the Harbour Bridge. You know, we're normal people.
Yeah.
We have fun.
Yeah.
There's not many other funny stories other than that.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
getting razzed out by people. Yeah, it was bloody, once again, keyboard warriors. You know, they want to razz you out for anything they can see. You know, but there's other officials that do that too.
Yeah. Okay. What? As in like from the commission or something? Or?
Yeah. So what people don't realise too is after a UFC, we have a meeting where the commission will usually ask us questions on why we did something during the fight. Like, so if it's something to do with me, they might say, why did you let him stay against the cage too long? What was your thinking there? Or, you know, or why did you deduct that point? And the judges, they'll go around and ask the judges how they scored that fight. So the judges try and keep notes as to why they scored a fight a certain way, which makes sense. So everybody that says judges aren't accountable they've got no idea, because judges are asked after the fights, why did they score a fight that way? Especially if they're on the wrong side. If it's a split and they're on the wrong side of it, yeah.
Well, I think it's just, it's if you commonly see a specific judge's name and they're commonly wrong, then that's when people start to go, what's going on here, right?
Yep.
But like, you know, I don't really know how much of a opportunity the UFC has to dictate how many, like the judging, right? Like a lot of that time it's organised by the commission, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. So in the US states, it's organised by the commission. Now, the UFC can request sort of referees and judges, because they might have an idea, they might have a good pool of referees. You see Mark Goddard working in the US because he's a good referee. So, you know, they'll ask for those referees and judges, who then have to be appointed by the commission, and so they have to register with that commission. So I'm registered here in New South Wales. I'm also registered in WA. I don't need to be registered in Victoria because they recognise New South Wales registration. So in
Queensland's the Wild West.
Wild West, all right, mate. They have like. Yeah, transgenders fighting midgets and things like that up there. So, you know, like, but they have to answer to a commission. When UFC, this will bring up a very interesting point, which I'm sure no one will know. When the UFC travels, so if they travel to Korea, they commission themselves. And it's like a McDonald's. There's no change. They don't do anything different. They still have 8 doctors. They still have everyone running their roles. We still get the assignments the same way. Everything's exactly the same. So for these conspiracy theorists that, they're commissioning their own event, they did it this way, it's all bullshit. I'm there backstage. I see it all. I'm one of the guys that gets questioned when they think something goes wrong. So, it's all the same. It's all the same wherever they go. Just because they're not in Nevada, when they're in Japan or Korea or Philippines, they're commissioning themselves. They still try and hire the best referees for that region and bring them into the show and the best judges. So here's one for you, which I'm sure you don't know about. I used to sanction events in New South Wales.
Okay.
So I would go to the promoter. They would say, Steve, we want to use your crew. We want you to sanction our event. So I say, here's the rules. This is what the fighters need. They need blood tests. They need a physical. They need this. So in Adelaide, the UFC came to me to sanction their events in Adelaide because I'm a sanctioning body.
Yep.
Dare I say, I would probably be one of the very few, if not the only person that's ever sanctioned a UFC.
There you go.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
For all you keyboard warriors.
There you go.
Podcasters.
Hey, I feel attacked personally.
Oh, so sorry. So what's your background? What's your background? I know the reason, you told me the reason why you're holding the podcast, but what's your background in martial arts and how did you get into all of this commentating?
I'll try and give you the short version. Okay.
So you're allowed to question us.
We're 140 in. We still haven't even talked about UFA, so we got to cover that. But I'll give you the shortened version. So I started in karate when I was a kid, 5 years of age.
What style?
It was called Goshinkan Karate.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was maybe like an Okinawan sort of style.
Yep.
I don't know if it was a Shotokan or it definitely wasn't a Kyokushin style.
Yep.
I think they still exist today.
Okay.
That school.
Nice.
But I don't have obviously anything else to do with them nowadays. So I started with that when I was 5. The reason why I ended up in karate is because I was I tell this story all the time, sorry. But I was a bit of a manipulator. So I worked out very early on that I could just cry to get out of things. So
it still works today, doesn't it?
so my mum,
to get me on this podcast is shedding tears. Please, Steve, come on. Go on.
That's the acting.
Sorry.
And then my mum was like, you're a bit of a wuss, so we'll get you into karate. And so I did that for 7 years, from 5 to 12. Loved it. I always loved martial arts movies, all that sort of stuff. So when I went to high school, had a couple of years break, and then in year 9, I had a friend, Shane, who had started doing this Chinese Kung Fu. And so then my mum was like, oh, yeah, go along. And then it really clicked for me, but simply because the master of that school was basically similar background to my parents. And I just really loved the training. It was hard training, lots of physical conditioning. It's a South Shaolin style.
Yep.
So a lot of the conditioning elements are really, really good. I think part of the reason why I still have retained decent flexibility, decent strength is because of that, having that foundation.
Sure.
And so I did that for 21 years.
Yeah, nice.
But so it would have been maybe around 2000 and I think telling the story recently. So 2014, I'd already competed. So around 2010 or something like that. Maybe even earlier, but I'd already done some pancration comps.
Okay.
And that sort of thing. Just wasn't smart enough. I had too much ego to believe that, I need to learn this ground shit.
Oh, yeah. That ground shit.
Yeah, basically. And then it was only after I used to roll, shout out to my mate Dexter, but, we used to always roll together, at a park, or he'd come over to my house. I had mats at home.
Yeah.
And he had started then training jiu-jitsu at VT1. And then it was after my Bucks party, we had actually, the guys had hired a cage somewhere around Penrith. I don't know which school it was at the time, but we just went there and beat each other up.
Oh yeah.
For a bit of fun.
Yeah.
And my mate Dexter, when I was doing the king of the mat rounds, he caught me in a submission, and that was the first time he's ever caught me in something.
Yeah.
And then I was like, fuck, maybe I do need to start learning some more stuff. And then when I moved when I started working down in Wollongong, was training at an MMA gym down there and focusing on my grappling. And like a lot of my grappling has actually come just from doing sparring, like live rounds. And then, so was doing that, still working in the automotive industry, spent 17 years in that, was running, MacArthur BMW. I was the dealer principal there, general sales manager at Mercedes-Benz Wollongong, ran a dealership in Castle Hill Holden.
Wow.
So had a career in the automotive industry. And then after COVID, things changed, you know, and then, I wanted to, sort of was missing a lot of time with family and still sort of seeing how much I missed out on in that couple of years. And then I thought, okay, what am I going to do? Obviously COVID brought out, a lot of things for everybody, when it came to small businesses and training and when everything gets shut down and all that sort of stuff. So I actually forayed into politics for a little bit. Ran in the 2022 federal election. Oh wow! Yeah, just as a candidate, and then did a lot of public speaking engagements, all that kind of stuff. And then after that, then I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Yeah. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to try and rebrand myself and move out of auto and do other things. And so the first event I ever did commentary for was they don't run anymore, but SFC, so Southern Fighting Championship, was a show out of Wollongong. Yep. One of my friends, Lena, she was one of the people that was really involved in that. She introduced me to Sam and Glenn from Combatants, and then Sam and Glenn gave me, after that first gig, then I got like a whole bunch more, and then literally like there was a period where I was like working almost every week. Yep. Doing shows. Yeah, yeah. And so that was where I was at. That was like what towards the end of 2022. Like, so say like throughout 2022, I was like doing lots of shows. And then I think, then I was like, so when I was doing all the shows, then I was like, okay, I think, because a lot of my stuff when I was doing pancreation and things like that, none of that's, you can't really find that footage or anything like that anywhere. That's right, yeah. So, so I was training with Renato and the team anyway, just getting work in. And then I said to Renato, okay, I should go do a fight and just remind everybody that I do actually have some ability. Yep. But like I know I'm older, so like I said to him at the time, look, I don't want to take anything away from the younger guys. Yep. So if the fight's a better fight for them, let them have it. But if there's an opportunity, I'll take it. And then at the time I was already like, I don't want to fight anywhere in Sydney simply because, if I'm already working all the shows, it becomes a bit of a conflict. Yes, yep, sure. Then the opportunity came up to fight a guy named Andrew Welsh who had like 6 fights up in Queensland at XFC. Yep. So did that just to, show everyone I still got it. Yep. And then that was it. And then like because of all the other things, then I was like, okay, I don't need to compete anymore. Yep. I still train. Like I have that. Brian and I, we talk about this all the time. He's like, for him, it was like he would fight when he had a fight. Yeah. Train when he had a fight. Yeah. Whereas like for me, it was like I'm more like that GSP style mentality. Yep. I train every day no matter what. Yeah. But like to me, fighting wasn't really the be all and end all. Yep. Of course, every young man wants to go and fight and be great at it. Yeah. But it was like I for me personally, I find fighting to be something that's for me to fight, especially at this age, right, would be just very selfish. Yep. I'd only be doing it for me. Yep. And like, I talk about this all the time because I have like a very serious mentality when it comes to the fighting element. It's like, it's do or die, right? Like you already surrendered yourself to the fact that you could die. Yep. And so even like, I told this story that when I went up to XFC, it was like the night before, I'm saying goodbye to my kids before I jump on the plane the next day. And it's like, I'm saying goodbye to them. Like it could literally be the last time I say goodbye to them. Absolutely. So that's why, I hung up my competition hats, so to speak, and instead, stick to the commentary, emceeing. I'll still get out there and play, and I'm happy to. I'll spar with anyone, really. But I'll do it, in the gym. Yeah. I don't need to put myself in that position where it's like I feel like it's do or die. I just want to have fun and enjoy it and train.
Well, you was up here one morning, and I put everyone through the ringer, and you jumped in and did everything and trained with all the guys, and it was great to see. I love it. I love that. I'm still a massive advocate for training. Obviously, Brian isn't,
somebody actually commented, I think I put like a short clip up when Brian was talking about the cartwheel kick, and then somebody again, keyboard warrior, typed up this thing and it was just like, oh, now look at him, a bill of health. And I'm like, oh, come on. Like, fucking Brian is Brian. Like, the guy's American. He's going to eat. Oh, man. And he's not fighting anymore. Yeah. So cut the guy a break. He's still a fucking great coach.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love Brian. I think Brian's fantastic, but I love to stir him as well.
Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be me if I wasn't stirring someone up, having a crack at someone.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like I hang around with Brian, Richie, like these ex-UFC guys, and I probably train more than them. Right?
Me too. Well, I've been in the cage more than them.
Yeah, you've definitely been in the cage more than them, right? But yeah, it's just funny. But like, I guess, I always like, and Firas Zahabi would talk about this, the idea of consistency over intensity.
Yep.
Life isn't necessarily a sprint. Like, it's like, if you can show up every day and like I do it, for the challenge of being better in me as opposed to being better than somebody else, because
me too.
You start realizing that it all becomes hollow anyway.
Yeah, true. I'm the same, Like I walk onto that mat. I've literally got 2 torn rotor cuffs and full thickness tears.
Yeah.
The doctor says, you need operation. I go, yeah, okay. And he goes, you're not going to get one. I go, nah. He said, well, as long as you can manage your pain. And I said, yeah, okay, I'm all right. And then I did hurt my knee. And he said the same thing to me. I got the CT scan or whatever it was, MRI, and he went, he goes, you really need to get an operation. I said, I'm not getting an operation. And he goes, yeah, okay. My doctor is the same doctor for the Panthers, so he just goes, yeah, okay. 3 years ago, I had a hip operation. I had a hip resurfacing. 30 years ago, I was told my hip was degenerating, so it had arthritis in it. And not to stop doing what I was doing because that kept the joint healthy and alive. And so I didn't stop, I kept going. The night before I went in the hospital, so what they basically do, they slice your butt open, they dislocate your hip, grind down your hip joint, your hip bone, put a cup in the other side and then put it back together. So it's almost a hip replacement. And I love it. It's fantastic. Best thing I ever did. The night before, but I was kicking that bag in there as hard as I could. I was smashing that bag. And when I was going into the operating theatre, I said to the doctor, I'd really like to be able to kick head height again. I haven't kicked head height for ages. And he goes, I'll see what I can do. He thought, this guy's a friggin' lunatic. Well, actually, I didn't say head height. I said I'd like to kick people in the head again. That's what I said.
Yeah.
And I think he just thought I was a lunatic. But the operation was really successful. Hip resurfacing. John Wayne Parr had it done. Nearly 3 years on since I've had that, and my kicks I'm still building them up to getting up to head height again, but I'm kicking better. I love life.
Yeah.
I just love life. Once again, going back to, I had 2 daughters, and we had them when we were young. My daughters are older than you, and so it's kind of a blowout, isn't it? But every holidays, and I was quite poor. We were quite poor. We grew up poor, but we managed to scrimp and scrape and save money to buy a house, and we went along that way. But we holidayed together. We did everything together. As a family now, we still do everything together. So I see one of my daughters is training here with me in combat classes. I went and watched her play netball on Saturday. So this was my Saturday. I went and watched my granddaughter play netball across the road. Then I went up to Springwood to watch my grandson play soccer. Then I went and watched my other grandson over at Penrith play rugby league. And then I came back to netball to watch my daughter play netball in the afternoon. So that was my Saturday.
Yeah, wow.
But that's fantastic.
Yeah.
For me, that's life. That's just how it is. I video, record my grandkids. My eldest grandson just got his driver's license. I helped teach him how to drive. They've all trained with me. I've got one that's 5 years old. She hasn't trained with me yet, but I've heard rumours that she's going to be in the gym. She's going to push my limits, I know. But we live as a family, and that's the best thing you can do is, I say to every parent, like, your kids grow up way too quick. Spend every minute you can with them. Still indulge yourself. I still train every night and everything like that. But we are with them so much, and it's so valuable. You got no idea. Different to when we grew up. Yeah. Like my wife's dad, when with my own daughters, he wasn't as close with them as I am with my grandchildren. I live with them. I play with them. I get on the floor and roll with them and play soccer with them and everything, you know, he wasn't like that. And so it's just that different era, you know, different thing. And how he grew up was completely different, as we were talking about before.
Yeah. It's a real blessing. Like they're the things, I got a good friend of mine who would always say, I think it was his mother that used to say is, you know, something about fried eggs. But anyway, the long story short was just, you know, life is good if you can just have breakfast with your family.
Absolutely.
You know,
that's my motto. When I leave this world, when I die, everyone's going to look at me and they can say that bastard did everything he wanted to do. Like, honestly, I did everything. I never chased money. I worked hard and I worked for bosses, same as UFC. I worked for the UFC, so I work for the UFC. You know, I do the best job I can do. And so for my gym was always passion. So this is idle right now, whereas if I was really smart, I'd have it busy, pumping through the day. A bit lazy like that, but I do things. I do things because I want to do them. I do things because I enjoy doing them. So I enjoy refereeing. I enjoy training people. You know, like you would have met Oren, and there's Lauren, and there's Emma. All these people were kids when they started. And I'll tell you, they'll tell you that I put them through hell. Ian's another one, kid, Dean Marshall, another one. They're still here. They're still giving back in some capacity, and they still value what I trained them in. And it's not just how to punch and kick. It's like just life and just enjoying life. So yeah, I believe in enjoying life to the max and live experiences. God, geez. You know, I did outdoor rock climbing. I'm scared of heights. I mean, I'm literally freaking out while I'm doing this climb. But I did it. It didn't cure me, that's for sure. I'm still scared of heights. But I just experience life.
yeah.
You know, I just love it. I love life.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a good way to approach things, and I think that passion, you know, like actually, I want to talk about this with you because you've come from a traditional background as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a real, you know, I think there's this real. I always feel drawn in two different lanes about this because, like, I feel like, you know, martial arts is something to me that where I'm so passionate about it. It's like the money's not really anything. It doesn't mean anything to me. Like to try and make money from martial arts.
Yep.
But on the flip side, there's a commercial reality as well. And
Yep.
I'm always torn between that because it's like, you know, yeah, when things are a commercial reality, obviously you can make them better.
Yeah.
But like, obviously the culture that you were brought up in terms of your exposure to martial arts was always that, you know, it's about passion and it's something special.
Yep.
Have you found like a sort of, you know, a decent balance point to walk that pathway?
So when I started teaching, I started a gym in Campbelltown with my partner over there, business partner Michael Scott, who still has the gym there. And then I moved over here, and that was next year is my 30th year in Penrith teaching Hapkido martial arts. And I didn't do it to make money. I had my other business which made me money, and so this was about passion. But this building here I own, but it costs money to run, so I have to make money. It costs money to keep the lights on. So you've cost me a fortune today with all these lights, John.
I've made you turn the lights on the background so we can't see the reflection.
Oh, and see, just
doesn't it look much better?
Don't worry.
It's so warm and inviting in here.
You can afford it, Perceval.
he told me the aircon's on. I'm actually freezing right now.
The heater's on. But reality is, yeah, I need money. I don't have the other business anymore. I sold that.
Yeah.
So I'd need money to live. But honestly, I live a pretty meek life. Yeah, like I don't throw money around like crazy. Although we did talk about lunch, and I'm shouting you lunch, so you got no say in that.
Okay, there we go.
Oh,
that's
geez,
nice of you.
You gave it a bit easy.
That's nice of you. Rubber arm here, you twisted my arm.
But yeah, you need money. But my passion is still in this. I still teach. I teach 90% of my classes here. For someone who's been in teaching martial arts for almost 30 years, well, I've been teaching 30 years, they soon pass it off on other people. I don't. I teach every class. Like last night I taught a kids class, then I taught a combat class, which is a fitness class / kickboxing. Don't tell everyone that. And then I taught a Hapkido class. Well, actually I didn't teach the Hapkido class. One of my black belts stood up and taught that. Young Jess, she stood up and taught that. But I'll teach every class if I have to. And I'll do that. Like I've got 2 classes tonight. I've got kids jiu-jitsu, adults jiu-jitsu. I'll teach both those. It's just what I do. This is what I love doing. And I'll try and train as much as I can with that. But passion is huge. I love seeing people progress and improve, and seeing my kids. When I say my kids, I'm talking about Oren and Emma fighting in my first season of Alta and winning. Never had a fight, never done MMA. Did a little bit of jiu-jitsu in kids class, like get on top of the person. Go in and have a fight and win was like, fantastic, traditional martial arts.
Yeah.
But, at the end of the day, I transformed Hapkido into what I wanted, my Hapkido into what I wanted, which is, hands are up, guard in the head, throwing jab crosses, as well as the traditional horse riding stances and the traditional kicks. So it's a good mixture. I have a good mixture.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's. We've gone for a couple of hours. So if people want to find you, what's the best way to find you? How do they connect with you? Social media. Give your socials a bit of a plug.
What for? Why would they want to find me?
To come to the gym to train.
Oh,
the commercial reality aspect. Keeping the lights on. Or?
I don't even know why people would want to listen to this. I'm these stories are my stories, and they make me feel good of achievements. But no, what do other people need to hear that for? But anyway, all right. My gym is called UFA Martial Arts Academy. It was originally, I called it Ultimate Fighting Arts at one stage, but the fighting became a bit negative connotation, I thought. But now it's UFA Martial Arts Academy. We're here in Penrith. You can look us up on www.ufa.com.au. And
that's a good. It's a very short, URL.
Yeah, I had to pay for that one. But it used to be www.ultimatefightingarts.com.au, and people were like, how do you spell ultimate? And so I got UFA. Anyway, but hit me up. I'm really accessible. I talk to everybody, as you could probably imagine. I talk to this bloke. I enjoy talking to people about myself. So that's why it was so easy for you. But you're welcome to come in and train with us, come in and check us out, come in and talk to me. I do work the UFC. I've actually put a lot of people in the UFC as inspectors, as judges. John Sharp as a referee. I trained John and put him in the UFC. So I did put a lot of. I'm not doing that anymore. So don't get that in your. You don't hope for that. But you can always come and talk to me about UFC fights. I'm always open. I welcome everyone.
Beautiful. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Johnny. I really appreciate this. And for you keyboard warriors out there, suck shit.
See you guys.
See ya.